Hi, welcome to Convos2Connect. I'm your host, Dorothy Camak. This blogcast is a space to discover peace in the present through the connecting power of conversation. Welcome to today's conversation, episode 2. On today's episode, I am delighted to talk to Beth Marshall. Beth has authored multiple books, including Grief Survivor, the powerful book that first connected Beth to me. Beth's message of joy-filled life after loss has led her to speak nationally and encourage others. I wanted to bring Beth to the conversation because she personally embraces peace in the present and is dedicated to helping others discover the same. I can't wait for you to connect with Beth. So let's get to the conversation. Hello. I want to welcome y'all back to my second Conversations to Connect, and I am super excited because I have my friend and author extraordinaire, Beth Marshall, here today. Hi, Beth.
Hey, Dorothy. What's up, girl?
Not much, just hanging out at your bungalow.
So fun. I've got to tell your listeners, for a long time I've been thinking I've got to find a mentor. I need someone older and wiser. And since I can't think of anybody older, I thought of someone wiser, and that's why I invited you.
Oh, stop.
Yes.
Stop.
No, I'm kidding. I learn so much whenever we hang out.
Oh, well, let me just tell you guys, for those of you who don't know, but you probably do because I'm pretty much a fangirl of Beth Marshall, but we were connected pretty supernaturally and awesomely through her book, which is why I want to have her here today. She's written multiple books, but this book, Grief Survivor, is her most recent book, and if you guys have been following the story, it has spoken directly to me. So, Beth, for those of you who don't know, Beth, how did grief come into your life and writing about it?
It came pretty unexpectedly. I grew up in a home, great parents, a really good situation, but there was one thing that kids were never allowed to be part of, and that was a funeral. I think they were maybe trying to protect us, and so if there was any kind of sadness or going to visit a family after a death, the kids would stay home and do backflips on the trampoline and eat Pop-Tarts while the parents would go and greet the family. And as a result, I grew up not having any clue what to do with this kind of sadness.
Wow.
And it was high school when actually a real dear friend fell off a waterfall and lost his life.
Oh my goodness.
And I can remember it was just so sad, but feeling that physical pain. And it was as though someone was standing on my heart. That's how I remember it feeling, and had no idea what you do with that kind of intense pain. And so I felt like I was kind of a slow learner on that.
Yeah.
But it was, then our family had gone years and years without really experiencing any tragedies. And that all changed, unfortunately, really suddenly with the deaths of 3 real close of our people, including both of my parents, within just a couple of years. And that season that followed left me with a whole lot more questions than answers.
Yeah.
And so I can just remember thinking, well, maybe I can just power through this. I feel like my faith is strong. I should be able to just pray my way through this. And what I realized is that losing part of your heart, or some people say losing someone that close, is more like an amputation.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's a huge pain. But that losing someone is one of the most intense things that we go through. And I realized by going about it the wrong way, or a pretty unhealthy way of just trying to deal all by myself, that's a real lonely place to be.
Yes. So what was kind of the turnaround for you when you realized, okay, Beth, as awesome as I am, I cannot do this by myself. I've got to have, a little bit of a guidepost or navigation to kind of come out of this. Did you have an aha moment, or where God said, I'm here. Can you just listen, and let's
Yeah.
get on the path?
That's a good question. Yeah, it was the 1 year anniversary after losing my mom.
Mm,
And Dorothy, I don't know if I've told you much about my mom, but she was just hilarious.
so funny.
She was so great. I'll never forget, I was at the University of Georgia, and it was right before Thanksgiving, and she calls up. She said, "Beth, you will not believe what I've done." I said, "Mom, I probably won't." And she said, "Well, you know that cute man, Jim Sinks, our friend over at the dental school at Emory. Well, he didn't have anywhere to go for Thanksgiving.
Oh, boy.
So I've invited him over." I was like, "Mom,
Of
you are
course
so
she,
obvious."
Of course she did.
Right? How desperate do you think your daughters are?
She just wanted the male suitor to come on over.
Well, she didn't stop with that, Dorothy. She went ahead and invited his entire dental fraternity over.
Of course.
So talk about happy Thanksgiving.
Gosh, I wish we had been a little closer in age. I would have come right over.
We didn't even care about the dressing.
No.
So these 20 hot, soon-to-be dentists show up at our house, and I'm thinking, this is way too good to be
You're like,
true.
give thanks.
Right, give thanks. I've never been quite as thankful as that day in November. But that was kind of my mom's heart. She never wanted someone to be left out of the party. So when she died very, very suddenly, it was a big old deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. So it was the 1 year anniversary of her death, and I had been just going through the motions and trying to smile and act like everything is fine. And I was at a Wednesday night deal at church, and all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, I started crying.
Yes.
And I mean...
And you can't control it, just comes on.
Oh, there was no stopping it. And some people can cry and it's really pretty. Like Jennifer Aniston, she can cry.
Right, seriously.
Angelina Jolie,
they have the perfect strategically placed tear.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Their mascara doesn't run either.
No, they look prettier when they cry.
Yes.
Well, this was the ugly cry.
You had the straight up ugly.
Out of control, and there was no stopping it. And these precious friends gathered around me. And I think at that point they realized, okay, she's been a big poser this whole year. We thought everything was okay because she was telling us that everything was okay. Do you ever drop the 4-letter word, the F word?
Oh.
Fine?
Oh, fine.
Oh, you thought I was going to say a bad one.
I thought the other one, because they have both been in my vocabulary during the last 9 months a lot.
Yeah, right.
So,
no,
but the fine is the worst.
Not the one that got you in trouble in middle school.
No.
But fine. I feel like so many people do that even today.
You are so right.
And we say,
it's such a loaded word. I mean, what does that mean?
Well, we don't want to upset someone else.
Exactly.
Or we don't want to really cry in front of someone, which I've realized now. It's been a few years, but I've realized now it's really okay to cry.
Yes.
And it's okay to laugh.
Exactly.
And it's all okay.
And it's okay to do like the crazy both at the same time.
Yeah.
Like where you seem kind of like crazy, but I think people do like
grief. I think makes us feel like crazy.
Yes.
The two are real closely related.
Yes.
But it was on that anniversary, and I remember a pastor saying, "Would it be okay if we prayed for you?" And it was like this big holy duh. It's like, why haven't I asked anybody to do that? Yeah. For a solid year of grieving by myself, journaling a lot, writing. I think that was helpful some. But for that solid year, I was just trying to go through this by myself. And it was at that moment, it was such a turning point because, all of a sudden, these people closest to me realized she's really not okay.
Yeah.
We need to kind of check a little bit more. But that prayer, I'll never forget the words of their prayer. And they prayed that the Lord could lift some of that pain off of my heart and that he would carry it. And I would stop trying to carry all of it by myself. And I'll tell you, Dorothy, I didn't wake up the next morning and everything was great and the sun was shining.
Right.
But I woke up the next morning and there was a sense of lightness. It felt like, you feel after a refreshing rain that gets the pollen out of the air, kind of that deal. It felt like that. It felt like, I'm going to be all right.
That's huge. I mean, that's probably just what you need to put that next step, to keep walking, to put the one foot in front of the other.
That's exactly right. And it was through that, too, that I realized how much, if anything, since I was trying to kind of power through this by myself, I saw how much journaling was helping me. It was kind of like that therapist that I should have been going to, but it was free.
It's free.
Right? No deductible.
Exactly. That's the best. Yeah. So you have this journaling thing going, and then you invited post Ugly Girl Cry, the
Yes.
community in, so you were starting to get those things that God gives us.
Exactly.
So you are now getting nourished from your community and prayer, and you continue to journal, and then take us.
Then 9/11 happened.
Mm.
And I can remember, you know how we glued to the TV
Oh, yeah.
we were? I kept thinking, if we watch this enough times, it's going to have a different ending.
Yeah.
This time it's not going to happen
Right.
like it did.
Right.
And I think we were all kind of mesmerized in a kind of really sad way. But the thing that I noticed, more than just the sadness of what had happened, was the feeling of grief without hope. That's the sense I got from watching Ground Zero.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, for those of us with faith, we know even in the worst of situations, we know the end of the story.
Right.
And we know that it's going to be good.
And it's hard enough when we know the end.
Exactly.
But, so you're saying you were observing the reaction of our country without that, or people, lives
hope,
without that.
Without hope. And it occurred to me, what if I can take, there were a lot of real helpful scriptures that had helped me in my journal, and just the Word of God that actually spoke to my heart during that time when I was missing. Well, my dad's death was a couple of years later, but mostly my mom at that point. And there were things like Psalm 34:18, where it says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." But it goes on to say that He will rescue us when our spirit is crushed.
Yes.
Is that the most perfect description?
That is literally, and I know that that verse is probably on so many Hallmark cards and whatnot, but when you're on the bathroom floor, and that's all I can remember, God, that is a divine scripture and revelation that He is near us. This huge God is down on the bathroom floor. He's with you glued to the TV looking at Ground Zero, and He knows crushing feelings, and He's scooping.
He lifts us out of it. And I was noticing, Dorothy, that we've read the promises over and over that He's not going to leave us alone. He won't leave us nor forsake us. But those words that I had maybe memorized a long time ago, all of a sudden were very real.
Yeah.
They were my lifeline.
Yeah.
And I found that there was such power in the Word of God. So the idea came to me, maybe you could take your journal and to make this into something that would help other people.
Wow.
So I got it together, wrote it, fairly quickly, because I had everything written in my journal.
Right. You had your experience of the journey you took.
And from that came A Time to Heal. The original, this is the first book. I'm showing it to Dorothy, and it's got a big heart on the cover.
It's a beautiful artwork, and I'll put the links on my website so you can link to all Beth's work. But we're looking at A Time to Heal is her first book.
And what it has, the heart has been broken, but it was very specifically designed that there's a thread coming through the heart, and that it's kind of mending it back together, but it's not perfect.
Right.
And the heart will never be the same. And I think for those of us, especially you and me, for those of us that have had profound loss, we've realized how true that image is. So that theme was kind of carried through the book. And toward the end, the heart's a little bit stronger, a little more together.
Yeah.
But so we got together a very primitive edition of A Time to Heal, and I went on a trip with some people from a church, from local Anderson, South Carolina people.
Nice. Represent.
We're taking a bus. I took the airplane because that made better sense.
Right. I understand.
Up to New York, and we delivered some teddy bears for children, and people took some music, and then I was asked to bring my new book. And so it was done at the local printer. It was just it looked like kind of a middle school science project with the little coily thing that holds it together. Right?
But those are the best.
Exactly.
Those are
craziest thing, and I won't make a long story out of it, but
we love it.
We delivered copies to fire departments that had lost their brothers and sisters. To St. Patrick's Cathedral was where I left one copy. They had makeshift memorials all around the beautiful atrium in this church. And there was one that was specifically for firefighters. And so I left one copy of A Time to Heal. This was when internet was just, email was just coming. So I put
Y'all tune in. I've heard this is like such a cool part of the story. So keep listening.
This was, I forgot I had told you this. This, in the back, I put our post office box in our small town in South Carolina.
For millennials, that's like, snail mail. This is not a Twitter, username.
Yeah,
So
it's not electronic at all. And it was about maybe a few weeks later, I got a postcard from a very nice woman.
That's also on paper.
That's a piece of paper,
yeah.
and you put that thing, a sticky thing, a stamp on it.
Right.
You guys might not know what that is, but Dorothy will cover that on her notes.
Yes, I
page.
will. So I'll link to that.
What a stamp is.
Right.
But anyway, so a woman calls me, and she asked if she could get some of the books for her grief support group, that she had lost her son to a drunken driving accident.
Wow.
And it was very crushing, but the kindest woman. And so I told her, yeah, we can, send some to you and all this. And we became friends. We would talk on the phone every once in a while. And she had a strong faith, which was very refreshing. And I said her name was Marvel.
Marvel.
Isn't that a cool name?
That is a cool name.
Right? Everybody should be Marvel.
Marvel.
So anyway, and I said, well, Marvel, would you join me in praying that we can find a way to get some of these books into Washington?
Yeah.
And I had not the first connection on earth. Nobody did I know. And she said, very nonchalant, she said, well, we have this friend that works down there over at the Pentagon.
Oh, just over down there at the local Pentagon.
Oh, down there at the Pentagon. And he's a chaplain for the Army. And long story short, within about 3 weeks, we had the first 2 cases of A Time to Heal inside of the Pentagon.
Wow.
And if anybody remembers those days, this crazy anthrax scare was going on too.
This was during that.
Yes.
Yes, because that was right up.
For for younger people, it was a chemical people were sending in the mail. It was kind of a mail terrorism.
Yeah, it was scary, because they were showing up everywhere.
And it could kind of kill you, I think. Right?
Yeah, I think people did die, and some were hoaxes and things, but it was like a real deal.
So mail was a big mess.
Yeah.
But for us to be able to get books up there was pretty remarkable. And I figured at that point, I thought, oh, well, this little project with the books is over. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think, 3 weeks later, I received an email from an Army chaplain. And he told me, thank you so much for the books. We have gone through every one of them.
Wow.
And you have no idea what a support they've been for not just our immediate family, but for those around us.
Wow.
People come to their offices and there are holes in the wall. I mean, the place still smells like fire.
Because it was a terrorist scene.
It was
there,
huge. That parts of the Pentagon were missing. And so, but that was a real turning point for me in a couple of ways. One, to realize, well, maybe there's more of a future for these books, for this book. But secondly, to know that our bravest soldiers and their families also grieve.
Yes.
I think, Dorothy, you and I have talked about grief a lot, and sometimes we feel like, well, maybe I'm just weak. Maybe I'm not strong enough. Well, we're not strong enough.
We're not. And it's a facade to tell ourselves that.
To try to be. Yeah. And so I think that just gave me a little confidence that if our strongest, boldest people in the country, those who protect our freedom, also struggle with grief, that's probably okay that we do too.
Right.
And we don't have to try to act like superheroes.
Exactly. Exactly. We all have hearts that can be broken.
Exactly.
And that need that mending. And I think it's learning. I love the cover of A Time to Heal because, as Beth was describing the artwork, it's not, the goal is not to go back how you were before, because we're not going to get there. And God's taking us on a journey, and He has the power, and He will heal us, but it's going to look different, and it's going to be stronger and more beautiful, but it's going to show that where the broken heart was, but who the healer
It will always be different. Well, one thing I think it reminds me is that I think we've all met the person who has had such a profound tragedy come in their life that they've made the decision, this is who I am, this is who I'll always be, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
And for that person, sadly, that probably is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you've decided that I will not ever be better. And I feel so sad for someone with that kind of a depth of loss. But I think we understand that even with the most unthinkable, the most surprising grief in our lives, that we can get stronger.
Exactly. And what I love about Beth's book, her most recent book, Grief Survivor, is the one that first came into my hands, if you guys remember that story, which I will link to that. But is that you have given the readers an opportunity to be part of the book with the journals. And Beth, I'm assuming from your own journaling and that being such a big part of it, of your journey, that it's not just a book. Beth and I have joked about grief books and things, and I'm sure you guys that have lost someone, you get a lot of things thrown at you, and most of the time all well-meaning, but they can feel so overwhelming. They can feel like textbooks. Too much. And really, you just need the first little step. You know, you need, and Beth's way that she ministers is just allowing the reader, the griever, to kind of dictate how you're going to do it. How it's not I have to read this many chapters a night. I have to get through step 10 on week 2, and everyone heals differently. Everyone processes differently, and that is what I love so much about your writing is that you give the reader a chance to kind of process, and there's something about putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's, you know, just saying, I don't know what I think, or I don't know what to pray, or I don't know what the next step is. But going back to where you were talking about people being stuck and deciding they're in this place and they're not going to change, what advice do you have for someone who feels completely paralyzed and doesn't know what the next step is? You know, are there tactics, or are there things that have worked for you, or you've seen in your community that kind of give that nudge?
Yeah. I think a couple of things that I've realized since starting to do some more speaking and meeting with people with all varieties of losses is that the ability to just share your story with somebody.
Yeah.
Even if it's, you know, it may not be a professional counselor.
Right.
But if you have a friend, maybe someone who's experienced a similar loss to yours,
Yeah.
I think that can be as valuable as a PhD grief counselor.
Yes.
Someone that can, and I know that you have friends who have experienced your same kind of story.
Right.
And I think that can be very healing. Just realizing that you don't have to go through this by yourself.
That is, yes.
I think, and I've even the first time I went to any form of a group, it was terrifying. Terrifying. And they did the most brilliant thing. What they had us do is we divided into twos. And my loss was still so fresh. And what I did, you would tell the other person your story, just 5 minutes worth.
Yeah.
And then they would present your story to the group out loud.
Oh, wow.
And so, Dorothy, I would tell a little bit of your story, and then you would tell mine. And so that fear of breaking down in front of a group, all of that was kind of gone. And so that was super healthy.
That is really, I've never heard of that before. Like,
cool.
telling, that is so, and I feel like it would just ease everything. And like, you've already connected one-on-one with someone before kind of approaching that group, which can be intimidating. Like, you know, it's like, we're all gathered here today, you know, because we all, you know, and it's like, let's try to make this as comfortable as possible. I think that's a really...
And it kind of broke the ice a little bit. And another thing I know for parents that have lost a child, and to me that is an unthinkable kind of loss. But to find a group, there's one called the Compassionate Friends.
Okay.
That is parents, grandparents, siblings, anyone grieving the death of a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I've not been to a specific meeting because I haven't had that kind of a loss, but it sounds like it is the most safe place for someone to
Right.
know that if they have a happy story they want to share, it's okay. They
Right.
can say the child's name, which is so important.
It's so important
Mm-hmm.
to not. I think it's so interesting how you talk about how you grew up, kind of shifting a little bit, but where children weren't part of the grieving
Right.
process, and I think there is still tendency in our culture. I see it in myself to just kind of like not want to talk about
Oh, yeah.
what happened
Mm-hmm.
because it just feels uncomfortable, not wanting to press into that. But as soon as we do, it's like the best thing.
Exactly.
Even if you're just telling a joke, like, I love that you talk about your mom in such a fun way. I didn't know your mom, but it's so much cooler to hear about your mom living
Oh,
rather
yeah.
than just, Beth's mom died before I met her, so that's not part of our conversation.
Right.
It's like you didn't know my dad, but like it's you can still know him if it shouldn't be a taboo
Well, that's
topic.
why I like reading what you write, because you give us a little glimpse of that story of growing up
Right,
and
right,
how he made you feel and that
right,
you were his princess.
right,
And
right.
I think those kind of memories are so strategic, so important. And I think our culture has it kind of backwards.
Yeah,
We're so terrified and awkward with grief. I
we
mean, think of the
are.
times we won't go to visitation or to visit a family because
Right.
we're terrified of saying the wrong thing.
Yes.
Well, I will tell you, there might be 1% of humans on this earth that might know a helpful thing.
Oh yeah.
And bottom line is, there are some times when there's just nothing that helps. There
Yeah.
are no words.
But showing up and being there
Right.
and is huge. Like I
Yeah.
remember Beth and I have joked about some of the fun things that people say.
Oh, yeah.
When you lose someone. And our friend Haley, the three of us had a lovely talk about that. But
Yeah.
the first funeral I went to after Dad died, I thought, well, I'm not going to be one of those people that says something really weird and cheesy and unhelpful.
Uh-huh.
But sure enough, the first thing that comes out of my mouth to my friend who'd lost her mom was something super awkward and weird, and like
Right.
I wanted to like dig a hole and get in it. So we're all capable of
Oh,
saying
yeah.
the dumbest, weirdest,
Oh, yeah.
hurtful, insensitive things, but I think we've got to get out of that fear because better to be in the conversation,
And to
trying
just
to
show
connect, yeah, and just rather than shying away, which is what we all fight, but like you said, I mean we've got to fight back against that tendency to want to just shut out or be alone and not be there.
Well, the one thing I've heard over and over from moms that have lost a child, there's one particular group in Greenville that I speak with some,
Yeah.
and they say, encourage people to say my child's name. I think it shows the parent or anyone who's a survivor, shows them that their life was important,
Yes.
that it impacted other people, and that those memories they're some of the greatest treasures we have.
Exactly. Exactly.
One of the coolest stories I heard was from Pastor Rick Warren
Oh.
after the death of his beloved son, Matthew. Matthew was 27. And after a raging battle with depression his entire life, they had known this was always a possibility. And Matthew did take his own life. And I remember as offers for support were pouring into the Warrens family. For anyone that doesn't know, Rick Warren is the author of Purpose Driven Life.
Yes.
And the pastor of Saddleback Church
Saddleback
in
Church.
California, and just a world leader. He's spoken at inaugurations. Well, on that day in April when Matthew died, none of that mattered.
Exactly.
Everything stopped. But I remember it was on Twitter, and it was one day people had just been wanting to do anything.
Yeah.
Just, what can we do? Give me something I
Yeah.
can do. And they've brought some great awareness to mental illness and depression, which has been so helpful. But one thing that Rick said that day, he said, if you have a story about Matthew, or a memory, or a picture that we may not have seen, would you please email it, Pony Express, Federal Express.
Yeah.
Get it to us.
Yeah.
Find a way, send it to us, or send it in the package, whatever. But those things are the most valuable to us. We need to know the impact that he made on other people's lives.
That's
Dorothy, can
awesome.
you imagine going to the mailbox
Oh
and
my
getting
gosh.
maybe a memory you've never heard? I'm
That's
thinking
so
a college
neat.
friend of your dad's.
Yeah.
I've heard of people doing that on social media as well.
That is the coolest thing. I've experienced
Mhm.
that personally, just of people that knew Dad in chapters of his life that I could never have known, whether it had
Right.
been school or something. So I think that's awesome that the Warrens did that. And I think people should be encouraged to do that. Even if,
Right.
you lost your loved one 10, 20 years ago, start today. There's no timeline. If things like A Time to Heal and Grief Survivor and what we have today were not available, and you still feel like you need to work through it,
Yeah.
start saying their name today, and
Yeah.
and connect with someone today and say, like, because God's grace and his ability to heal and restore, there's no expiration date on it.
No, that's
You know,
good.
like he can
Somebody needs to tweet that, people.
tweet hashtag.
You guys need to write that down.
We'll
Say
write-
that again. There's no
expiration
no,
date.
that's
See,
good.
I've lost it. I don't even know. I have ADD
But it
apparently
was
because
brilliant. But you
yeah.
recorded it.
Yes, it's so good. that
Dorothy, you
we're-
reminded me of something about A Time to Heal. I remember one morning
Uh-huh.
sitting down with my own, it was a spiral journal, just my old journal I would write in. And I had this fear. I thought, what if I forget about my dad and his eccentric funniness? His name was John Glenn. But you could never totally convince him he was not the astronaut.
I was like, I know that name.
Really? Yeah.
So it wasn't
And
the John
so-
Glenn that we it was a different.
Well,
I'm
people
assuming.
would ask
Did you?
him, say if we needed a table in a restaurant and they were all
he-
full. He was asked one night if he was the real John Glenn. He said, well, of course. Well, they whisk us off to this gorgeous corner table
Brilliant.
overlooking the water or something.
Of
like,
course.
Dad, you big player. But it was actually really awesome.
That is.
But I had this fear, what if I start, you know how when we get older we don't remember everything, like you just lost your train a minute ago?
Yeah, exactly.
What if I don't remember my mom's sparkly blue eyes? What if I start to forget these things that are so important?
Mm-hmm.
And so one day the kids were all at school and I just started writing every memory I could possibly remember from being 5 years old
Wow.
on the Jungle Gym and all the
What a
craziness
cool-
that happened in a big family. And I mean just wrote and wrote for about 2 hours.
That's
I don't
amazing.
think I moved. I think both of my feet went to sleep. But when I got done, I mean, some of that was writing through tears, and
Yeah.
some was writing through laughter.
Laughter, I'm
and
sure.
I think one thing you and I have been very blessed with is to have had very fun childhood.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was something I wanted to preserve for our kids
Yeah.
and to fill in those blanks for them, but for their children now. I think that's so valuable, but I think that writing, that part of journaling was a turning point too, because through having those stories, I could share them with our family. On an anniversary this year, I threw out on an email, hey, how I'm celebrating Mom's anniversary this year is she at one point got behind an ambulance and followed it through the traffic to the sale at Hobby Lobby. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
So she, got in the fast lane and followed an ambulance. So I said, brothers, sisters, cousins, everybody, it's been 15 years since Mom's death. Here's what I'm going to get, drive to Hobby Lobby behind an ambulance and maybe make some all-bran muffins like she would make bran muffins. And so I said, what are you going to do? And I said, would you send it to me, reply all. So by
that's
the
so great.
end of the day, we had this whole list. Everybody's laughing hysterically. So a day that could have been super sad.
I love
Those
this.
anniversaries kind of can stink or...
That is
okay.
so great.
But it worked out so well, and I was just looking forward to the next email that might come in.
Yeah, it's like it's totally, you took a day and you kind of took it back and you said, like, I'm not
love
going to
that.
be in that, and you actively, and you involved other people, the other
Right.
people that knew your mother, your other family members that could share in that joy. And that is great, because we've talked about how grief can be sneaky and it can surprise us. And I'm new to this type of close loss. This is really my first round with grief, and so I'm new to it, but have started experiencing the surprise aspect of it.
Yeah.
And you being, much further in the journey, and you said with your mom, you said 15 years,
Yeah.
I think that's such a great thing to be aware of, that, it can be sneaky. Do you have any other kind of troubleshooting? And
Yeah.
we know that God's grace is so huge that he can cover those days. But I just love the email thing. So are there any other things you can suggest for people?
Well, I think too, just realizing that it's okay. If the way I look at it, it's kind of like the tsunami wave that comes over you, and you're not expecting it. And all of a sudden, you can be in the cereal aisle of the grocery store, or whatever was your thing with the person you're missing.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you can be just a bucket of tears or a mess. And I think what we do to ourselves is we think, well, I just haven't gotten any better. I'm just still right
I've done
where
that.
I was, when actually those ebb and flows, those waves can be expected. They're part of the deal. They're going to come. I will tell you, sitting at my computer the other day, something came up and tears were just streaming down my face.
Yeah.
And what I've learned and what I try to teach people when I speak is that it is really okay to cry, but it's also okay to laugh.
Yes.
See, I think that's one way I know that is a coping skill of your families.
Yeah.
And ours too.
Yeah.
Especially when there's been a difficult time someone's gone through. I think when we stop laughing is when we really can do a nosedive.
Exactly. And I think that's good what you said about the wave and coming over. It's just not to fight what's happening, and I think I'm having to learn that, because I definitely have that, like, well, it's been, so many months, I should be better by now. Right. And so it's like this sense of failure that comes over when you do have the sadness or the surprising day in the grocery store where, everything comes over you. So I think that's really good. What you said is just allowing the ebb and the flow, and just not fighting it, and just kind of being in it, and trusting that he is near, and he is pulling us through, and instead of fighting.
That's good. Well, Dorothy, the other thing I think I've seen is our society is in such a rush.
Yeah.
And I hear of people that have a huge, profound loss of an immediate family member, maybe that lives even in their same home.
Right.
And you're expected to take the weekend off and be back at work on Monday.
Yeah.
And there are countries where grieving is a season, and people dress differently. And and we don't do that here.
We don't.
And as a result of our hurried culture, we don't give people the time they need. And I've been asked, how long does grief take? And I think the answer, real profound, is it takes as long as it takes.
Exactly.
And we're going to always miss the person that we love, but I think the grief transforms, and I think we can learn through healthy ways to go through it by getting the help we need, taking care of ourselves, going to a doctor if we need to. There's no shame in that.
Exactly.
I have a quiz I like to give people that these are the things that make us feel like we're crazy. And it might be the appetite changes. Either you could mow down the 7-Eleven candy aisle.
That's me.
Or the other team that says, oh, I couldn't possibly eat.
I don't understand that team, but they apparently exist.
They have a team.
Yes, they do.
They're a scrawny little team.
They are. I'm
team.
just the Krispy Kreme team.
You gotta go for the team that works.
Which exactly. But Beth maps that out in her book, as kind of like recognizing those. Is the quiz in the book, or is that on your?
No, it's something when I speak I'll give it, and it's a list of about 10 things that are some side effects. A lot of people talk about they feel like they have the flu. Things like that. And then when you hear that you're not the only one that's experiencing these, I think that builds a little strength in us. But at the same time, what I love to do after this exercise is to ask people, what would you add to this list? And people might say bitterness, or feeling angry, or did this really happen? All those are real, very real. But I think what I've seen too is that our seasons of grief, when we go through it, it's as unique as a snowflake.
Yeah.
Everybody's, and even people within the family here we're leaning on each other, that they should be our support. Well, they're grieving too.
That's true. And I think that's something I want to kind of tap into a little bit more in trying to understand the dynamics, and maybe you can speak into this, is recognizing that we all do grieve differently.
Absolutely.
Even within our circle of all grieving the same person.
Yeah.
And I think my tendency in wanting to, fix myself or whatever, and also kind of want people to grieve the way I'm grieving and not understanding. Can you speak to showing other family members grace and mercy, and because we want it ourselves, so how we can kind of navigate through that with loving our families and wanting to be loved. And I know I've had some tantrums, and I've not been understanding of that. This person may be grieving differently. So how to kind of navigate that?
I think one of them, and we can't say all men and all women,
right.
But I will say a lot of times a man will grieve in a different way than a woman is, maybe without so many words.
Mm-hmm.
And we might just assume that they're not sad, and then we will get mad at them for not being sad.
Right.
The whole thing sounds pretty crazy.
Right.
But it is what we do. If someone's not reacting the same way that we are, we think that something is wrong with them.
Right.
And so what I believe I've seen just from hanging around with some way smarter people than I am, which that's a big group.
Stop that. People. Don't let her fool you guys, please.
But what I've learned is it's real critical to try to just have a little extra mercy on the people that we love.
Yeah.
Because chances
we want that mercy too.
Right. We need it. But chances are they're probably doing the best they can.
Exactly. Yes.
And as long as someone, this is sort of my general rule, is not long as someone is not hurting another person or threatening the possibility of hurting themselves.
Right.
That
can happen, yeah.
But that they're probably doing the best they can, and to try to just give them a little mercy. The other thing that you reminded me of before, Dorothy, was kind of like how long does grief take? Mm-hmm. And when people try to rush it up, so it's been 2 weeks since you lost your dad. You good now?
Yeah.
Or asking how you are. Isn't that a stupid question, right?
What have you been up to?
Well, I'm real terrible. Yes. You really want to hear?
Yeah.
And what I really encourage people to do is, if someone's a casual acquaintance, sometimes we have to just give a general answer. I'm doing as well as I can.
Right.
But for a close friend that really, really wants to know, I think the time is to be as honest as you can.
Yes.
Is what's going to get you the help. And then when we just talked a minute ago about if you do reach that point, and we get that place. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I can remember the day where I was driving along and the pain was so deep. We'd had so many losses. I thought, why do I buckle my seatbelt? If I were to get hit by that 18-wheeler, this pain would go away. And then to me it just seemed my brain was saying that. And even though I wasn't really prepared to do that, it was a scary place to be. Yeah. And I think that's the point where I wish I had sought some help.
Yeah.
And people don't know where to start. Dorothy, what I would say to someone is to go to your family doctor.
Yes.
If you've never been to counseling before and you're kind of scared. But just write out before you get there everything, sleeplessness, anxiety, whatever it is, but just write it all out, because we get into the doctor, we're just so nervous and we don't.
We get frozen.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's a way that they can, or your health care provider can maybe refer you to a counselor. And there's no shame in some medication.
There is no shame. And the first stop doesn't have to be the only stop too.
Oh, no.
It's like, again, I'm new to this little world of grief, but if you go to a doctor and they say something and you kind of travel down that road and you don't feel comfortable, or maybe you decide to confide in a friend or go to a counselor that you don't feel that connection.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be the final.
Oh, you're so right.
The final thing. Like this is not a checklist of like it's all the same thing. Go to this person, do this thing. It, like you said, people handle grief differently. There are so many different kinds of doctors and different kinds of people to talk to, and it's going to work for some people. It may not work for others. And just I think the thing is just to keep putting that left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot,
Exactly.
and God will show you
Which way to go.
which way to
Yeah, I
go.
agree with that. And even something as simple as trying to do one kind thing for yourself every day.
I love that.
I
You
think we get
talk
in
about
this
that.
deal of so many of us are so busy taking care of lots of people
Mhm.
in our lives, and we get put last.
Mhm.
Or you might have other family members that you're trying real hard to,
Right.
keep an eye on, that sort of thing. And I think it's real easy to forget about us.
It is.
And maybe you need to go see a Medea movie or
Yes.
something totally mindless.
Totally. That's probably been some of my most healing things have been like, oh, I don't know, a pedicure or,
A
just
massage.
like, yes. So, and you can feel guilt. I remember the first time I went and got my nails done.
Mm-hmm.
I was like nervous. I felt, guilty, like, oh, I
shouldn't be
I shouldn't be
enjoying
enjoying this. And
Yeah.
it's like, wait, no, my nails are jacked up,
Yeah,
and I think I'm gonna like get them done, and
Right.
and it's
Well,
nice.
you're worth it. I think the thing is we are fragile. When
Mhm.
we've had something this extreme happen in our hearts,
Mhm.
it's real important, even just getting some fresh air every day.
Right.
For some people, I hear some of the military widows are one of the groups that I talk with. And I've heard one person say, on Wednesday I got dressed.
Yeah.
And that was her goal.
That's
And if that's something she hadn't been able to do, that's a big deal.
it's amazing
Yeah.
what getting rid of our body odor will do,
Right?
because I kind of
shower.
went through a little phase like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, this has been awesome, and there's so much more that I want to talk to you about. But can you tell people like where they can find you, and talk maybe just a little bit before we close about your connection with the American Widow Project, because I think that's a really neat part of
Sure will.
your ministry, and
Yeah.
maybe folks that are listening may want to hear a little bit about that specifically.
This was such a cool story. I was introduced to Taryn Davis,
Okay.
who was 22 years old when her hero,
Wow.
her husband, Michael Davis, was killed it was in Iraq, and it was in a roadside bomb. I think they had been married less than a year, and she sought to find some kind of support. And every widow group she found was 75-year-old men or women, and there was nothing at all for young women. So she started traveling the country to see if she could connect with other military widows who might have a clue. This has been, I think, 7 years ago.
Wow.
And currently there are 1,600 military widows who are served by the American Widow Project. And their goals are so clear. It's beautiful. They'll have retreats, and what I've been to, they're called getaways, where they invite the American Widow Project encourages.
That's so, and I love. Who did you say the founder?
Her name is Taryn Davis.
What a testimony that she found herself in this unimaginable grief that she felt like no one could understand. There was not a community,
Right.
but that she kept seeking and searching, and like what has been done with that now is this network of people doing things together, and
it's beautiful. And there are lots of just natural donors that come and want to support them. But when a widow goes to one of these events, their expenses are taken care of. People donate meals and the most beautiful things just to support. There's no way we can ever repay them for the sacrifice their families have made. But it's such an honor to get to speak with these women and to see their grit, to see their strength, but also to see that they're in a place where it's okay to cry.
Yeah.
And they're with people who get it.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're not alone anymore. Something I like to teach them and to talk about, and this was from a grief specialist, Robert Niemeyer is his name, and he says that closure, and everybody talks about closure.
Right.
You've gotten some closure in this yet?
Yeah.
3 weeks,
Yeah.
right? But
They're
he
like
said
ready
closure is for bank accounts, not for love accounts. And
Oh,
the
wow.
last thing we ever want to do is to, we get to a point where we can live our life again. That's
Right.
beautiful.
Right.
When the deep part of grief subsides. But I think that one of the best things we can do, and I love the more stories I hear about your daddy, the happier I am. I love a little more glimpse into that life of that man that was made such an impact on you and so many others. But I think one of the best things we can do is to write about them.
Yeah.
Save those memories. In both books, in fact, in Grief Survivor, I've made places where you can put pictures.
It's so great.
Save an article, write something, write one page, scribble in it, tear the page out. I don't care what you do with it. It doesn't. It's your book.
That's what's so great is that it is. It's like a scrapbook, or and Grief Survivor, to feel it, it feels like an album almost, like something that would be on your coffee table. And I think if we can just get past the stigma, if you will, that might not be the right word, and just like know that the benefits, the joy, the hope that can come with digging into our grief, that there is a hope and a joy on the other side,
I think that was the purpose in both books, was to let someone know, first of all, you're not alone.
Right.
You are stronger than you think you are.
Yes.
Because I know there are days we're hanging on by a fingernail.
Yeah.
But there are going to be some brighter days.
Yeah.
That this depth for that person that might be listening now, that's in that place, I just want you to know you're not always going to be right there.
Yes.
It might feel like it right now, but there are going to be some brighter days, and there's going to be a time, Dorothy, a real turning point, I think, that I've heard someone, Zach Smith's story. I know some of your listeners have heard that.
Yes, yes.
But one of his children, Lizzie, she was a friend of mine when she was 12. I said, Lizzie, she's just a real grown-up kid. Now she's 15, I think. I said, what does healing look like with grief? I know you've been through a lot in your short life of losing your dad. She said, well, Miss Beth, I'll tell you what. It was a day I went to school, and I found out another kid had something really terrible to happen, and they had lost a parent. And instead of wanting to run away from them, that day I wanted to go toward her.
Wow.
And I wanted to do something to help her because I knew my story could help her. And she said, then maybe that's what healing looks like. And I'm like, okay, I need to be as smart as you.
Yeah, this is Lizzie. Lizzie. Well, she is very, very smart, and so right. I mean, like, that is. Yeah. If we could all just run to each other more.
Right. And in the beginning, we're not ready.
No.
We don't have the strength that it takes. But there will come a day, and I think that's what I would say to that person who just feels like they're kind of just stuck in that valley right now. There's going to be a day where you get a call, and someone's experienced a similar loss.
Yeah.
And instead of thinking, no, I can't do it, something goes off and you decide, okay, I can use this story that I have. Or there's a beautiful scripture about with that same compassion that's been poured on us. That I think a lot of not that there's purpose. I don't know how to figure purpose in pain. But that when we turn it around and we can pour that on someone else, everybody wins.
Everybody wins. Yeah. And it is a real measurement that you have healed and grown. I think we can sometimes feel like, I think what we were talking about earlier, like, am I still, I hadn't gotten through this, I hadn't gotten over this, which is, again, we don't get over it, but to have that measurement of, oh, like, I can tell my story, I can help someone else, that is true healing and true growth, and a measurement of that. When I think if we can say, oh, and then having these journals to look back and say, like, I'm not in that same spot anymore. And I think that's what Beth has been so much for me, is like, just meeting you and talking to you in our first conversation. Like, if you know Beth, you see her light and just her fun nature, that, like, she's been through hell and back, but there is an opportunity for happiness and thriving while we're here on this earth. And God really does that purpose, to continue showing His amazing grace, while we're here. Right. And we do have that final eternity to be reunited with our loved ones and be in glory with Him, as believers. But right now we can still live in joy and hope. So
I think that's the one thing I'd want to say to someone right this minute is that there really can be joy-filled life after loss.
yes.
But it might take the hard work and the time of getting through it, getting the help you need, maybe writing about it, whatever that takes. But there really is, I mean, you're a fine example of that, Dorothy. You know, we reached the point where we can tell the story without crying all the way through
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Or tell the story to a stranger. But it's just these little landmarks. And then suddenly we're taking these small steps, and then we're in a different place.
Yeah.
And by writing, I think you can see where you were scribbling, probably like I was in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
And then a year later, and it, you know, next year will still be another season of figuring stuff out.
Right.
But I think we can see those little landmarks of getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah. Well, you were a testimony to that, Beth. You were a
back
strong woman. Love it.
Back to you, sister.
Well,
thanks.
As we close, if you can just tell my friends, my tribe, my listeners, where they can find you on the great big internet.
That is exactly it. Well, I made it real creative title, griefsurvivor.com. Griefsurvivor.com, and it's not necessarily a blog, but I do like to post articles. Super short. Anybody reads reads articles on your phone, you know how we get a little crazy if we have to scroll more than about twice. We're done.
So you speak to the phone readers. That's awesome.
I speak to the phone readers. I try to keep it short, concise, and encouraging. That's my goal.
That's
on there.
Awesome.
But it also refers you to some there's a suicide hotline on there.
You do. You've got a lot of great resources on your website.
And other websites. I love to direct people to other good, helpful places. And starting in the next week, we're going to have a grief survivor group study guide that is going to be a free resource. It's going to be a download, and so anybody that has a group in your organization or your church can just go and get that for free, and it's a 6-week study.
What a great resource.
So no charge. So I'm a big fan of anything free.
Free,
right?
We love free.
Don't we like free?
That's free. Now you are pretty active on Twitter. A lot of my groupie tribe, my friend people, we are on Twitter.
Hey, send them over.
What is your Twitter handle?
Okay, well the more playful one is Liz G Marshall, L-I-Z, as in Elizabeth, Liz G Marshall.
Okay.
Or there's one called Grief Survivors, plural, at Grief Survivors. And so there's that. So just stop by. I would love for you to leave a comment.
Yes. Say hey to Beth on Twitter. She's fun, and she will message you back and retweet, and she's a fun tweeter.
Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook.
There's one. I've got a book page. It's called Grief Survivor and A Time to Heal. But if you put my name, Beth Marshall, there are a few imposters. There's somebody in Florida with my name.
Oh, we don't like that. There is only one Beth Marshall.
And don't mix me up with that Beth Moore. People always think, you know, somebody came up to me at church and said, "Oh, I'm so excited about your Daniel Bible study." I said, "Are you confusing me with my identical twin cousin, Beth Moore?"
We're just both hot blondes that love Jesus.
I mean, with grandbabies.
With grandbabies, like
exactly.
What?
But yeah, don't confuse me with her. Yeah.
Well, I will put your Facebook, because her Facebook book page is great too. She does has a lot of great encouragement on there, so I will link that as well. Well, friend girl, thank you so much for conversating with me.
This has been a good conversation.
Yes.
Hey, it's been so fun, and I look forward to hearing from some of your tribe people.
Well, thank you. Well, I know that they will be excited to connect with you.
Hey, you guys are fortunate to have Dorothy on your team. She is the coolest.
Well, we're all in this together.
Yeah, Mom.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.